Every time you create something new, there should be questions.
A healthcare pioneer is being compared to visionaries like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. This morning, Elizabeth Holmes.
The next Steve Jobs. Elizabeth Holmes was riding high, the world's youngest self-made woman.
The world was captivated by a young woman who grew her company from a tiny startup to become one of the wealthiest people in the world. She was named in Time's Most Influential People in the World list. Parents held her up as a role model to their daughters, showing them that they could be whatever they wanted to be. She even donned the famous turtleneck shirts, drawing comparisons between herself and Steve Jobs, the Apple genius who inspired her. However, just when she was finally at what would be the pinnacle of her career, it all came crashing down.
Elizabeth Holmes was charged with fraud in 2018.
Now she's facing the prospect of decades in prison for fraud.
Her net worth plummeted from $9 billion to zero. Her company failed and was shut down. And she met her eventual end in January 2022, when she was sentenced to serve 11 years in prison. Who is Elizabeth Holmes, and where did it all go wrong for her? On the 18th of November 2022, Judge Edward Davila, in a dramatic conclusion to one of the most sensational cases in recent history, sentenced Elizabeth Holmes to 11 years and 3 months in prison. Now, Elizabeth Holmes wasn't your regular low-life criminal. Just 7 years before the sentence was passed, at just the age of 31, Forbes had named Holmes the youngest and wealthiest self-made female billionaire in the United States, on the basis of a $9 billion evaluation of her company, Theranos. Elizabeth Holmes was born into ambition on February 3, 1984, in Washington, D.C. She entered a world where legacy was everything. Her father, Christian Holmes IV, once a high-ranking Enron executive, later navigated powerful government circles. Her mother, Noel Ann, worked in Congress. The Holmes name carried weight. Its history intertwined with Charles Louis Flinchman, the immigrant tycoon who built America's East Empire. Wealth had faded, but the hunger for greatness remained. Holmes was no ordinary child. At St. John's School in Houston, she was already charting her own path, obsessed with computer programming and selling C++ compilers to Chinese universities before she could legally drive. Her parents saw genius and fueled it, enrolling her in Mandarin lessons and later Stanford's elite summer program. In 2002, she entered Stanford as a chemical engineering prodigy, working in cutting-edge labs, chasing breakthroughs. By 2023, she had filed her first patent, a wearable drug delivery patch. But Stanford couldn't contain her. After an alleged assault shattered her world, she made a bold decision in March 2004. She dropped out, took her tuition money, and set out to change the face of healthcare forever. In 2003, Elizabeth Holmes set out to revolutionize healthcare with an audacious vision: blood testing with just a few drops from a fingertip. She founded real-time cures in Palo Alto, driven by a fear of needles and a hunger for disruption. Experts dismissed her idea as impossible. When she pitched it to Stanford professor Phyllis Gardner, the response was blunt: "This won't work." Other medical authorities echoed the skepticism, but Holmes refused to listen. She found an ally in Shannon Robertson, Stanford's Dean of Engineering, who not only believed in her, but also helped her secure funding. Rebranding the company as Theranos, a fusion of therapy and diagnosis. Holmes shared any association with the word cure, wary of its implications. With Robertson as her first board member and a growing network of powerful investors, she was no longer just a college dropout with a dream. She was on her way to becoming Silicon Valley's next legend. By the end of 2004, Elizabeth Holmes had secured $6 million for Theranos. By 2010, that number had skyrocketed to $92 million. In 2011, She captivated former Secretary of State George Shultz in a 2-hour meeting, securing his place on her board. Over the next 3 years, she built what was hailed as the most illustrious board in U.S. corporate history. For nearly a decade, Holmes kept Theranos in the shadows, operating in sheath mode. Then, in September 2013, she emerged with a bombshell. Theranos had partnered with Walgreens to launch in-store blood collection centers. The media frenzy followed. By 2014, Holmes was on the covers of Fortune, Forbes, the New York Times Style magazine, and Inc., hailed as a visionary. Forbes crowned her the world's youngest self-made female billionaire, ranking her 110th on the Forbes 400. Theranos, now valued at $9 billion, had raised over $400 million in venture capital. By the end of 2014, Holmes held 18 US patents and 66 foreign ones. In 2015, she inked deals with Cleveland Clinic, Capital Blue Cross, and Ameri Health Caritas, expanding her empire. The accolades poured in. Holmes joined the Harvard Medical School of Boards of Fellows, landed on Times Magazine's 100 Most Influential People, and was named Glamour's Woman of the Year. Fortune called her Business Person of the Year. She became the youngest recipient of the Horatio Alger Award, and even President Barack Obama named her Presidential Ambassador of the Global Entrepreneurship. Elizabeth Holmes wasn't just a billionaire. She was a Silicon Valley legend. But legends, as history has proven, don't always last. Elizabeth Holmes didn't just want to change healthcare. She wanted to be a legend, and like any great illusionist, she built her personnel with meticulous precision. Her obsession with Steve Jobs was no secret. The black turtleneck became her armor, a calculated uniform of genius. She claimed she had worn them since childhood, but insiders whispered otherwise. An employee even recorded suggesting the look to her in 2007. It was all part of the act. Then there was the voice, a deep commanding baritone that added to her mystique.
Over the last 11 years, we've reinvented the traditional laboratory infrastructure.
Except it wasn't real. Former colleagues caught glimpses of the truth, overhearing her slip into a natural, much higher pitch.
We talked to our lab team and they said, okay, you can do the draw, and so they did.
Years later, Holmes herself admitted it had been fabricated. Behind the curtain stood another figure, Ramesh Sonny Balwani, a tech entrepreneur nearly 2 decades her senior. They met in 2002. She was 18, fresh out of high school. He was married. By 2003, she had dropped out of Stanford, and he had left his wife. The two became inseparable. Their partnership extended far beyond romance, though Balwani didn't officially join Theranos until 2009. He had been pulling strings from the shadows since its inception. When Theranos began to crumble, Balwani disappeared. Holmes claimed she fired him. He insisted he left. Then, in a stunning courtroom revelation, Holmes painted him as a tyrant, controlling, abusive, the architect of her suffering. He had tried to kill the person she was, she said, and create a new Elizabeth. But when asked directly, she denied that he had ever forced her to lie. Holmes had spent years mastering deception, her voice, her image, her empire. Now the world was left wondering, was she the victim or the mastermind? This is something from the playbook of some of the greatest con artists. They legitimize their scams for fraternizing with people with known credibility, through which they buy public trust. Elizabeth Holmes didn't just build her company. She built a fortress of credibility, brick by brick, with the names of the powerful. From the start, she understood that trust wasn't just earned, it was borrowed. And so, she surrounded herself with titans of industry, war heroes, and political heavyweights, using their reputation as a shield for what would become one of the greatest frauds in Silicon Valley history. Harry Kissinger, George Shorts, James Matthias, Betty DeVos, names that carried weight in boardrooms and beyond, became unwitting co-conspirators in the illusion of Theranos. Shorts, a former Secretary of State, was among the first to sign on, his presence opening doors to a parade of dignitaries and deep-pocketed investors. The money poured in. Tim Depper, a Silicon Valley legend and father of Holmes' childhood friend, handed her $1 million check without blinking. Soon, Rupert Murdoch, the Wharton family, and Carlos Slim followed, collectively sinking hundreds of millions into the promise of revolutionizing blood testing. Holmes wasn't just securing funding, she was shaping policy. In 2015, she successfully lobbied for a law in Arizona that allowed patients to bypass doctors and purchase lab tests directly, an effort that conveniently expanded Theranos' potential customer base while concealing the fatal flaws in its technology. She even dabbled in philanthropy, announcing partnerships with figures like Carlos Slim to bring her breakthrough blood testing in Mexico and launching Iron Sister to champion women in STEM. All the while, she was selling a dream built on deception. Holmes' genius wasn't in science, it was in skeptical. She knew that power begot trust, and trust made deception easy. By the time the walls of Theranos began to crack, she had already written herself into history. The question was no longer if she had lied, it was how she had convinced the world to believe. If you love stories of financial fraud, con artists and scams, like, subscribe and turn on notification bell so you don't miss out on the next one. Theranos promised to revolutionize healthcare in a single, nearly miraculous device. The Edison device. It claimed to be able to run dozens of lab tests using just a few drops of blood from a finger prick, providing quick, accurate results that would shake up the entire medical industry. The pitch was simple and seductive. No more needles, no more waiting for lab results. This was healthcare for the future. But it was all a lie. Investigations soon revealed that Edison couldn't perform the vast majority of the tests it promised to do. Instead, Theranos had been relying on traditional commercially available machines from other companies to do most of the testing. The few tests Edison could conduct were shockingly inaccurate, producing results far from the reliability promised. In short, what Theranos claimed to be a cutting-edge technological breakthrough was nothing more than smokes and mirrors. The unveiling began with a whisper, a secret investigation by Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou. A trusted medical expert had tipped him off that Theranos' flagship device, the Edison, might not be all it was cracked up to be. Theranos had boldly claimed that with a few drops of blood from a fingertip, the Edison would run dozens of tests quickly, cheaply, and painlessly, revolutionizing medicine. But Carreyrou dug deeper, interviewing whistleblowers and poring over confidential documents. The truth emerged. The Edison didn't work as promised. Instead of performing complex tasks, it delivered widely inaccurate results. Worse still, Theranos was secretly relying on standard off-the-shelf machines for most of its testing. When Holmes got wind of the investigation, she unleashed her legal powerhouse, David Boyce, to intimidate Carreyrou and his sources with legal and financial threats. Yet, in October 2015, the bombshell article hit, shattering the carefully constructed illusion. The miracle machine was nothing more than a house of cards built in deceptions and false promises. Within months, regulatory agencies cracked down. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services found serious lab irregularities, leading to abandoned Holmes running a clinical lab. Major partners like Walgreens pulled out, and lawsuits began to pile up. In a dramatic twist, the empire that had once heralded as the future of healthcare was revealed to be built in lies. On June 15, 2018, after a relentless 2-year investigation, a federal grand jury indicted Elizabeth Holmes and Ramesh Sanin Bhawani on 9 counts of wire fraud and 2 of conspiracy. They were accused of orchestrating 2 schemes: defrauding investors with planting promises of revolutionary blood tests and deceiving doctors and patients with technology that never truly worked. Despite vehement denials, Holmes' carefully constructed facade crumbled once the celebrated face of Theranos resigned as CEO, yet clung to her board chair position as the trial began on August 31, 2021. For 7 dramatic days on the stand, Holmes claimed she was misled by her staff and dominated by Balwani's controlling influence. But the evidence was damning. Fake demos, falsified reports, inflated contracts, and financial deceptions laid bare her true role. In a final desperate bid to outmaneuver justice, Elizabeth Holmes turned her personal life into a delaying tactic. After meeting William's Billy Evans in early 2017, she quickly wove him into a carefully curated narrative. By 2019, they celebrated a secretive union, though the legal details remain murky, hinting at a power couple designed to distract and dazzle. In July 2021, Holmes welcomed a son, only to shock the world in October 2022 when reports emerged that she was pregnant with a second child mere weeks before her sentencing. Court filings later alleged that this pregnancy was not just a private joy, but a calculated move to postpone her prison term. But this delayed tactic yielded no positive results for her. On July 3, 2022, the jury found her guilty on 4 counts related to defrauding investors. With the specter of up to 20 years in prison looming, Holmes awaited sentencing on $500,000 bail. Then, on November 18, 2022, Judge Edward Davila sentenced her to 11 years and 3 months behind bars and ordered her and Balwani to pay $452 million in restitution. Ordered to surrender on May 30, 2023, after a brief delay to arrange childcare, Holmes reported in prison. Her fall from Silicon Valley's pedestal complete. Even as she mounts for an appeal, the collapse of her grand illusion stands as a stark reminder: no web of deception can forever outwit justice. Elizabeth Holmes' story is a wild ride of ambition, deception, and downfall. She promised to change healthcare with a simple drop of blood, built a billion-dollar company on lies, and then fought tooth and nail to avoid getting caught. Her collapse shook Silicon Valley and made it even harder for women in business to be taken seriously. It's a harsh reminder that when chasing power becomes more important than honesty, it's not just one person who suffers, it's everyone trying to build a better future. Elizabeth Holmes wasn't the first to con the powerful and rewrite history with lies. If you thought Theranos was the ultimate scam, wait until you hear about Victor Lustig, the man who pulled the unimaginable, selling the Eiffel Tower twice. His story is a masterclass of fraud Holmes can only dream of. Click here to watch.